What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the Spartan Blades Pallas. That's P-A-L-L-A-S, which apparently means, well, I guess Pallas was a Roman god of war. Is that correct? A god of warfare or something like that, a warcraft. I'm not really sure. I probably butchered it, and somebody can correct me in the comments section. Anyways, this is a really, really cool knife, and it was provided for review, not as a gift, for review by my buddy Harry Gage. You guys will probably be familiar with that name. Mr. Harry Gage is my only mythic metal knight on my Patreon, which is a really big deal to me. That's extremely generous. Thank you so much, Harry, for all of the content you have provided to this channel. I really, really appreciate it. So I'm reviewing this knife. You know, I moved it up in the line because I've got a whole bunch of his knives and I want to get them sent back to him. And I had a lot of time to play with this between today and a couple of days ago when I unboxed it, whenever it was. And I'm ready to give my thoughts on it. So anyways, let's go ahead and move forward here. Overall length of the Spartan Pallas is going to be 8 3/4 inches overall. The first time I measured that, it really surprised me because it doesn't seem like it's almost a 9-inch folding knife. We'll get into that, but it is. So blade length on this guy is coming in at about 3.75 inches probably if you measure from there. If you measure from back here, you know, from tip to the edge of the scale back there, it's like 3.8, 3.9 inches. Cutting edge, you're looking at exactly 3.5 inches of cutting edge there. How about some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1? Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So that's a pretty good size comparison. It's comparable, but definitely larger to larger than the Rat 1. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, we have the Spyderco Delica. Spyderco Delica coming in at 7 inches overall. So this is a big knife, but it's a big knife that doesn't feel that big. It definitely feels robust though. I'll give you an example of the action here. It has kind of loosened up a little bit from when I unboxed it because I've been flipping it quite a bit. Not quite drop shut, but it definitely wants to do that. The action on this is really good. It's exactly what I'd expect from an aluminum framed knife that's running on bearings and uses that push button lock. It's very fidgety, and my favorite thing about it is all the different ways that I can deploy it. Been practicing with this a lot, and it didn't take a lot of practice to get really good at the thumb stud deployment, get used to the flipper tab, and using the little button to sort of whip it in or out. It's very fidgety, and to get that on a knife that's actually made to be used hard and a full size knife, that's really, really cool. A lot of the other button lock knives that I've handled, number one, have not had this many deployment mechanisms or deployment options, and number two, have definitely not been this big. So they managed to do that and still get a package that makes sense, and I really, really appreciate that. That's awesome. Moving on to weight here, let's go ahead and get this guy on the scale. We're looking at 4.9 ounces. I bet you guys were expecting more, right? I bet you guys were expecting 5.5 ounces at least. Now, under 5 ounces. That's pretty cool. A lot of people still will say that's too heavy. For me, a knife that's almost 9 inches weighing under 5 ounces is awesome. A lot of thought and care went into this knife. I'm going to talk about all that stuff with you guys, but this is, it's obviously a knife that they really took time with in the design. Another model, I'm not really familiar with Spartan knives, but a model that has captured my interest for a long time is the Spartan Harzy folder. The one that's, what are they, $500, something like that. I've heard that if you're a fan of Hinderer knives, which this knife actually also reminds me of, a lot of an XM18, that the Spartan Harzy folders, would be something that you might be interested in. And I have come close to pulling the trigger on one many, many times, but that's the only other knife that I've really, familiarized myself with, at least in pictures and in online specs. But so this is a new one for me, definitely. I did not know that this knife even existed, by the way, until Harry pointed it out to me. And I looked up a picture and I thought, that definitely does look interesting. I'd like to take a look at that. So Anyways, let's take a look at the blade here. On this particular one, we have a tumbled S35VN blade. Drop point, sort of spear point combination. It almost looks like the XM18 with the harpoon notch, but that's just because of this dip right here. Not quite though. You do have a flat that carries out about 70% the length of the blade. The blade is nice and robust and slightly rounded all the way down to the tip there. You can see lots of material behind the tip, so plenty strong. It also has plenty of room to drop towards the cutting edge. Now, what you end up with at the cutting edge is not a laser beam, but it is certainly sharp and certainly capable of taking care of tasks around the house or general EDC tasks and outside tasks as well. Also, S35VN is one of my favorite steels of all time. It's one of the most well-rounded steels out there. I think it's an excellent choice for a knife that was obviously geared towards more hard use stuff. So anyways, you've got some nice, really nice tumbling. I like a deep, heavy tumbling that's still got some reflectivity on there. That's really nice. Large grain structure there in appearance, and it's very even. Really looks good. I really like the oversized thumb studs that have milling all the way around them. The texturing is all the way back. You're in a situation there where when your thumb contacts that, you're going to get a hold of it. You're not going to slip off of it. That's really, really nice. They're also in a perfect place, both in terms of deployment and in terms of the cutting path. For the most part, they're going to be completely clear of the cutting path. If you're wondering, up here is not quite a finger choil, but it does serve as a nice sharpening choil. Moving down to the handle, what you're looking at are 6061 T6 aluminum handles. You have a nice, large Torx head adjustment side of the pivot. A really nice, just simple button. You know, that's what these should be. Just a large button that's just sticking up just a little bit so you can get a hold of it. That's what disengages it. Nice, you can see how these work. Essentially, as you push that in, it moves that cylinder head out of the way. And then when you pull it back, cylinder head slides into place behind the blade tang, which is right there. You can see that little cutout that's made for the cylinder head. That cutout is perfect for that cylinder, and what you end up with is absolutely rock solid lockup. No play up, down, left, or right. Really, really like that. Moving down the handle here. Normally, I don't like when stuff is on the handle, but I kind of like the Spartan Blades logo. It's just cool. The Spartan helmet with the sword and the arrows through it. It's just nice. It doesn't bother me. It says S35VN on the blade. Honestly, I'd like the front to be blank and to have S35VN back here. If you're going to put something on the blade on the front, put the logo right there and move it off the handle. Not really that big of a deal. It doesn't really bother me. You have USA back here. That's kind of out of place, honestly. That honestly should be on the blade over here. But again, that's just my opinion. I like the texturing down here. You know, these hard coat, these Type 3 hard coat anodized aluminum frames can be a little bit smooth and slippery. The texture pattern down here is actually where your fingers fall naturally. That combined with the natural curvature of the handle, the jimping, the finger choil there, you know, the primary choil on the handle, yeah, the knife's not going anywhere, but it's still going to slip in and out of your pocket easily because they don't put any texturing on the other side underneath the pocket clip, so that's nice. You have standoffs that are extremely similar to the Hinder XM18, which again just reminds me, you know, of the Hinder XM18. The whole knife, the silhouette, the shape of it. I mean, it's its own thing. They didn't copy Hinder at all. But I like it because it makes me think of an XM18, and the standoffs, those big barrel spacers, look like XM18 standoffs. The jimping also reminds me of Hinder jimping, and it's also kind of in the same place, down here, down here. I like that. You know, it doesn't create a hot spot, but you lock in if you're going to hold it that way, especially if you're going to hold it upside down. There is a lanyard hole back here. It's just big enough to get some 550 through. I also really appreciate, by the way, that they're using the larger screw heads, the larger button size screws. Not only does that look better and kind of add to the hard use theme of the knife, but it's easier to adjust. If you have to take this knife apart, you don't have to worry about your tools stripping out. Moving to the other side here, we have, curiously enough, a spanner side to the pivot. Some people don't like that. You can buy a spanner tool or a spanner head for $1.50 at Walmart. I don't really care. In fact, I'm not going to adjust this, but a lot of my experience with spanner sides is the pivot will actually still allow you to take the main head out without having to hold anything in on the other side. If you do have to, Well, you're inconvenienced just enough to have to go down to your local hardware store and buy a spanner head that will fit that side. Whatever. It just doesn't bother me. It's not something that'll ever bother me. The pocket clip is also a pocket clip that reminds me of an XM18's clip and how it's shaped and how it's set into the handle. This means that because it's actually cut into the material, you're not going to have left and right play, and there's plenty of retention. It's actually a little bit heavy. If this were mine, I probably would bend it out just a little bit to get it to back off my pocket. But thankfully, the material underneath the clip is smooth, so it makes actually for a pretty easy transition in and out of the pocket. Once again, I'm going to demonstrate this meaningless demonstration to you guys because you can't see, but I'm pulling it in and out of my pocket and it's not a problem. There's definitely some friction there because the pocket clip's really tight, but it's not a big deal. I like the arrow in there. In fact, you know, that right there tells me that this is a Spartan knife. I mean, that is recognizable to me, and I like that. I like that they're kind of doing their own thing with the pocket clips. A couple of Torx head screws back there, and that's pretty much it for the other side. On the inside of the knife, there's no milling. It's just solid aluminum, which is fine considering I think the knife has plenty, you know, in terms of weight, it's already in a good spot, so it's not an issue. Ergonomically, this knife is just a masterpiece. I mean, this is, it reminds me a lot of the XM18, and I love the ergonomics on the XM18. I also really like this notch up here. It's like they know like exactly where people are going to want to bear down on the blade, and that's, I love that. But they still offer standard jimping. Whether you want to hold it right here like this, or you want to, you know, kind of choke up on it and kind of bear down on it, despite there not being jimping right here, it feels nice. It feels like I can squeeze this knife really hard and bear down on it if I really want to. Now, obviously, not all of us are going to be using our knives for tasks like that, but if you want to, they've made that little, you know, alteration in the blade to allow for you to do that, but they haven't, you know, it's not an alteration that hinders you somewhere else. You know, it's not something that's going to change its cutting performance, or even though it's in the cutting path, it doesn't stick out of the side of the blade, so it's not going to get caught on anything. It's not a gunk trap. It's just nice. It's a nice thing that's there. I really like the blade shape. I really like the fidget factor. I really like how easy it is to deploy. In fact, guys, honestly, I can do the reverse flick by using the meat of my finger, even though I messed it up there. Angle of the camera, guys. The meat of my finger, or I can dig my entire fingernail up underneath there, which is what I normally do, and kick that blade out. This is a very, very fun fidgety knife. I really like this knife all the way around. Like I said, the only minor change that I might make is just move the USA off of that, move it on to the other side so it says USA S35VN on the other side, and then put the Spartan logo on the blade. I think that would look cooler. That's just my opinion. But that has nothing to do with function. This knife all the way around functionally is fantastic. I would be overjoyed to carry this thing every day and use it as a tool. You know, it's a big knife. You get a lot of blade, but it doesn't feel like a big knife. And when it's folded up, you know, this way, it doesn't take up a whole lot of room in your pocket. I mean, up against a knife that a lot of people like to carry, the PM2. We are at an angle here, so keep that in mind. Flip these around. As you can see there, the footprint is roughly similar to the PM2. It's not quite as tall. I mean, take a look at the footprint up against the Ritter Hogue. You know, same kind of thing. It's a little bit longer, but it just doesn't take up that much room in the pocket. And it's, you know, it's similar in weight. It's a little heavier than these knives, but it's similar in weight. And it's you know, the weight is at a point where, you know, it's half an ounce heavier than the Ritter Hogue. It's negligible. It's not something that I would notice. There's only one thing about this knife that makes me cringe just a little bit. I'm going to turn the autofocus off. That drives me crazy. It's the price. This is a USA-made knife. You're looking at aluminum and you're looking at S35VN. You know, a lot of people think for what this costs, you know, you should be looking at titanium. And a lot, you know, I've heard people talk about, well, aluminum's nowhere near as strong as titanium, and, you know, you drop it and it can ding up. Listen, hard-coat anodized aluminum is going to scratch up and ding up if you drop it, but I've shown a ProTech many times on this channel, the ProTech Rockeye, that's used extremely hard every day by a buddy of mine who uses it in the service department at a dealership, and it is beat to crap. And I showed it a long time ago, already beat to crap, and it's more beat to crap now. Aluminum holds up. This grade of aluminum holds up just fine. There's no issue with it. You can go check out that video if you want. I also have another example of a 13-year-old Boker Kalashnikov that was absolutely beat into the ground and used for all sorts of things that knives shouldn't be used for. And again, it's fine. In fact, the locking system is even similar, it just has a spring in it. So I don't have a problem with aluminum. I think most people just want titanium because it's considered more of a premium material. And when you're looking at a $285 knife, the word aluminum makes some people cringe. You know, I want you guys to bear in mind, you know, most of Microtech's automatic knives, their out-the-front knives, are also made in aluminum, and most people don't seem to have a problem with that. Their combat Troodons, their Scarabs, and their Halo 6s, which can reach nearly $700, are using that grade of aluminum. So as far as whether or not it's considered premium, you know, every individual person's going to think differently about that. But, you know, when we talk about these materials, I have to point that out, that some people are being, you know, unfair when you're looking at certain models, and they seem to forget that a lot of people don't mind paying 2 to 3 times more for a knife from a company like Microtech. So the material is fine in terms of durability. That's what we should be thinking of it as, you know, with this knife. It also creates a situation where you get good balance. So this knife, you know, due to the nature of aluminum, that's why it's only coming up at 4.9 ounces. And it is balanced. I mean, the blade and the handle make it to where this knife is balanced right on that choil where it should be. Sorry, doing this at the angle is really, really difficult. But I do not have a problem with that. Would I like titanium? Sure, I would, but I'd also like lightning strike carbon fiber or Timascus, you know? I mean, we can go round and round and round all day. I don't have a problem with that. I still, though, don't really like seeing $285 on this knife. I honestly thought this would be between $200 and $220. I think $220, $225, you know, maximum would have been okay. But let me emphasize this. This puts me in a weird spot because it's like, this is always a part of the video where it's like, well, do I recommend it? Functionally, this thing is just freaking awesome. I love this. I love the blade shape. I love the look of it. I mean, it looks serious, but it's also fun to play with and has that cool fidget factor with the push button thing. And it's just fun. This knife is fun to mess around with. And, you know, I imagine, now this isn't my knife, so I didn't go out and use it, but I imagine equally fun to use. And it's made well. Fit and finish on this thing is excellent. We didn't look at centering. I'll let you guys take a look here. After me flicking it relentlessly for days, it's still coming up centered just fine. Excellent knife functionally. So yeah, you know, I don't really like the price at $285, but you know, if I didn't recommend this knife, then people would be like, well, you recommended the Shaman and that thing's overpriced. So yeah, truthfully, yeah, I can still recommend this knife. It's a little bit overpriced, but man, it's a great tool. If this had been $300, I just said no. That's truthfully what I think. If this was $300 or more, I would have said no. It's too bad because it's an excellent knife, but it's just too much money. But it's right there where it's like, you know, if you like the look of it and you like the push button thing, like this is one of the best that I've handled. I mean, this and the ProTech Mordax are the two best kind of push button fidgety flipper knives that I've handled, and this is just a really impressive build. These knives don't need to have 20 CV for me to justify that price. I'm perfectly fine with S35VN. I'm really, really happy with how this is put together, and I can recommend it. So anyways, that's going to be pretty much all I can say about this knife. If you guys enjoyed this video or at least found it entertaining, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other videos, I do, of course, have lots of stuff about knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't not like. So check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.